Hello, my name is Benjamin Hart. I'm an American attorney and managing director of Integrity Legal here in Bangkok, Thailand. As the title of this video suggests, we're discussing tourism to Thailand. A recent article from the Bangkok Post, it's bangkokpost.com. Article is titled "Collection of 500 baht Fee from Foreigners Starts Next Year." And we've discussed this. I did another video on the kind of the quote-unquote tourism tax, tourist tax here in Thailand. But they were quoting from Yudasak Supasorn, that's the governor of the Tourism Authority of Thailand. And it was noted that as part of this tax measure, quoting directly from Bangkok Post, Mr. Yudasak said the additional 200 baht, that's within the 500 baht fee, will be earmarked for projects initiated by the private sector, community enterprises, or social enterprises that would like to transform their business to meet the fund strategy, helping the country restructure from mass tourism to high-value or biocircular and green economic model and environmentally concerned tourism. Not that I don't have any issues with environmentally concerned tourism or biocircular green economic model, but this notion of restructure from mass tourism, that's concerning. Quoting further, and again, this is from Mr. Yudasak, the head of the Tourism Authority of Thailand, quote from him directly, quote, "The additional cost won't have an impact on tourists as we want to focus on the quality market." I don't know what to say to that. I mean, to me, this is an example of what happens when you get a little too detached from the realities of the situation. The fact is, in my opinion, Thailand, frankly, could use as much tourism revenue right now as we can get. Now, I understand there are concerns folks have out there about public health and safety. Okay, fine. You know, if that's the concern, that's the concern. Let's focus on that. But why are we shifting our paradigm to the quality market and restructuring away from mass tourism? You know, as I've discussed in other videos on this channel, there's a strong argument to be made that mass tourism back in '98, after the 1997 financial crisis, had a substantial impact on helping, especially to stabilize the Thai baht at the time. You know, and I'm not going to get into the economics of all that too deeply, but long story short, the Thai baht lost a lot of value, and it could have had real convertibility problems, which could have led to major issues in the international markets for Thailand. And a lot was going on. This is just one factor among many, and I want to be very clear on that. But yeah, you know, receipts of foreign reserves, of foreign currency, and coming in from mass tourism had an impact. And in fact, I would argue probably a pretty substantial one, and helped Thailand kind of regain her footing, and that was a good thing. I'm just curious why we're moving away from this paradigm of mass tourism, and who exactly are we trying to cater to here? You know, this notion of wealthy tourists or high quality, this, that, and the other thing, you know, high net worth individuals, VIP tourists. I've discussed a ton of this. We've discussed all the visas that they're trying to promulgate and sort of create to kind of lure these folks in, but I just, you know, what's wrong with a good number of middle-class folks, a good number of folks that can afford a couple of weeks in Thailand and then go home? Why are we, you know, especially willing people that want to come and be tourists and just enjoy the country and go home, why are we turning that away? And look, I understand the immigration implications. There is a policy argument by many out there that you might want to be a little careful with tourist visas, because you might be letting in people who ostensibly are tourists, but who actually want to live there. I mean, for example, in the American immigration jurisprudence, we have what's called Section 214B of the Immigration Nationality Act to deal directly with that. You know, tourist visas are not issued to folks who, you know, who the consular officer think is not a genuine tourist, basically. But that's not really what we're talking about here. We're not talking about immigration policy to try and deflect, you know, would-be immigrants, or sort of undocumented immigrants, as U.S. law calls them. No, instead we're talking about a paradigm shift away from a sector and from a method of bringing in tourists that accounted for 17 to 20% of GDP going back before March of 2020. Now, I do understand if folks are saying, hey, we just have to deal with the reality that we're not going to get the same numbers of tourists moving forward because the aftermath of all of this is just not as conducive to tourism, at least for the immediately foreseeable future. I understand that. That makes sense. But that doesn't, again, appear to be what's going on here. It appears to be an attempt at changing policy toward the type of tourism we're looking to bring into Thailand. And if that's the case, I hope that's not the case. Let me put it that way. I hope that's not the case because I think that would be a bad way for us to go. I think it would be far better to encourage as many tourists as possible to come to Thailand. Well, not even that. I'm not even saying, there was a time, and I think you could argue going back 10 years ago or so before some of the more security regulated aspects of Thai immigration. Yeah, there were folks, especially foreign criminals. Thai immigration was quite worried about that. So, yeah, I'm not saying open up the floodgates, but why are we, this notion of going for only this small sliver of the overall tourism numbers? Why are we going for that? Why not just encourage, standard middle class, perfectly good tourists? Why aren't we encouraging those folks?